Okay, so we've talked about how to get the application, some of that early work, but then like that's just the tip of the iceberg. Like now you actually have a business to run. You haven't built anything. It's just like in your head, and maybe you've made it onto paper now, right? So like tell me about what happens right after you are awarded your license, right? You had to go through the build out. How did that work with contractors? Like, did it go as fast as you thought? Just talk to me about the actual building of your facility.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, it was a really rushed timeline for us, only because it was the timeline between securing a partnership with someone who won a magical lottery to the government stipulations of getting a door open. They had this target of April 1st in their minds, or else they were going to fine you. I think it was like 25 or $50,000, so material. And so there was this big race. And so I still remember, again, because like all the work that we'd done in the past was no longer applicable given this new system. We basically did everything from scratch from the moment of securing that partnership. So I still remember it was first week of February of 2019. We were in the Ottawa market looking at real estate. We, I believe, signed a lease on February 7th, so like first week of February. And from that day, went to build out immediately and hiring an operational rollout all the way to opening our doors on April 1st. So if you think about that timeline, that is less than 2 months to get everything up and running. And so this was a over 3,000 square foot space in operations that we had never done before, with a brand new team running the floor, buying inventory of the government, as well as completing the rest of the diligence process with the government, because like that wasn't done during a lottery phase. So all that was a big rush. I still remember a last minute runs to IKEA because like we needed a table, we needed a chair, like things like that were like literally down to the wire. But we were just kind of in the middle of all of it, and I think some of our biggest challenges, even in that rush, was some of the systems that we had to set up. Like we had never worked with a POS system before. We had never worked with security providers. Those are all things that I feel like tend to be overlooked when you're talking about creating this beautiful brand that looks all pretty. But these are the nuts and bolts of your operations. You need to get it sorted out, by law. So there were a lot of things along the way. I don't even know how we survived those 2 months, but we got it done. And we had a lot of fixing up and kind of fine tuning of what we were doing for months way after we opened. And it was just like kind of figuring out like, what is it that we actually want to do? What are the things that we want to revisit? What are things we overlooked completely over the first 2 months? And how do we move on and be better from there?
Yeah. Well, my story is a little different from that too. I don't know how you did that either, Mimi. So congrats for getting through that. So for us, I don't know if you guys remember earlier, I said I won my license in it was December of 2016, but we didn't open our doors till September of 2018. Everyone in Maryland that has a dispensary won their license in December of 2016. The first store did not open until August 2017. So even that took, out of the 100 that are open in the state, the first one didn't even open for a year. What happened after we won was every county set zoning. So that's the only jurisdiction in my state that local municipalities have over cannabis. In some states, that's completely different. The local municipality controls everything. But in Maryland, only thing that they could control was zoning. They couldn't control whether or not it was coming there or not. There's no opting out for medical in Maryland. So the county that I was in actually made it a little difficult. I remember meeting with the city council or the county council, and they didn't want cannabis there. So they knew all that they could do was create very difficult zoning for us to navigate. Because of that, it was very hard for us to find a place to lease. And another thing to be noted in the US, of course, because cannabis is federally illegal still, most people will not lease to you if they have any type of mortgage from a bank. And this is because the bank could call their mortgage because they're doing business with an illegal business. So most people, if they have a mortgage, they are not going to lease the building to you. So you had to find someone who owned property free and clear, who was willing to lease to you, or you had to buy a building. So we bought a building. And it was not in our original plans. It was very difficult to navigate and took us a long time to find a building that fit within the zoning regulations that we had. And it really came from my mom and I both have a real estate background. And I remember one day when we were having trouble after like the third place that we tried to lease fell through. I remember saying to my mom, how about we work backwards? Let's find somewhere that fits and then convince the owner to do whatever we want. So it just happened to be, and everything happens for a reason, and things are definitely like purpose driven. I believe in that. We found a building that fit, and when we talked to the owner, he was like, people ask me to sell this building all the time. I don't, I always say no, but I like you guys. I want to sell it to you. We ended up buying the building. Like I said, an expense we were not expecting and we didn't think we'd have to go through, but ended up being much better because something else that's happening in the US, because they know how difficult it is to do stuff, there's something that we like to call a green tax. So a lease for like, I remember we got quoted $12,000 for a 1,500 square foot space. I now own a 6,000 square foot building and our mortgage is much less than that. So ended up being a really much better deal, much better situation for us, but very hard to navigate, had to put down a huge down payment. Luckily, we had a bank that worked with us to be able to finance it because we wouldn't have been able to afford it any other way, but that took a long time to navigate. Building it out took a long time. And we had to do a really extensive build out. It was a furniture store before we had it. It was an empty furniture store. So everything in my building, we had to put in there ourselves. My mother was going through health issues at the time. So we were navigating all of this all at one time. And we eventually opened our doors, but it just took a lot of back and forth, a lot of inspections with the Maryland Medical Cannabis Commission, a lot of inspections with the county to get those approvals. I mean, it was just really a lot of back and forth. So I think that, it's going to be different for everybody. But the more prepared you are, the better. But then you still also have to be prepared for that change and pivot, like Mimi was saying.
Yeah, that pivot isn't an if, it's just a when. Like that's coming over and over.